we could have a quick uh, discussion about maybe like a 5 minute thing about what we brought up online, the whole thing with the streaming that's going on. You know,
Oh,
the
yeah,
HBO
with Dune.
Max. What? With
Uh,
Dune.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't mind giving my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
Gonna
So
be
what's
45 cents, I'm
your
sure.
well, what I know that Matt, you said that your reaction is that they're the devil, basically, HBO Max
Yeah,
for releasing it a day early. Not that it matters whether it's the same day, day early, or a week after it releases in theaters. Uh,
I
but
think it matters. That's precisely what my problem is.
yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
why
That's
does it
precisely.
matter for you exactly?
Oh,
Well,
go ahead, Matt.
okay. I mean, releasing it a day in advance on streaming is a move to kill the cinematic experience. There are way too many people who don't understand why it's important to actually see a movie of that scope and scale the way that it was supposed to be freaking seen. And if you're going to get it a day early and you're going to get it cheaper on a streaming service, it is a detriment to the time and effort and money that everybody has spent to make a piece of art that you're supposed to see on a big screen. It's just wrong. And I mean, HBO Max has been a pain for years. You know, like it started off when they got South Park and they decided to censor every image of Muhammad uh,
Yeah.
that South Park ever produced, and so on and so forth. But I mean, like, uh, no, you are supposed to see movies in a movie theater. That is part of what that's part of what separates movies from television, and that's what I mean. Just like what separates humanity from the apes, we are supposed to go to the movie theater.
Or
Yeah, it's going far. What
So,
about you, Jason? So are you
okay,
basically in the
mine
same
is
camp?
really simple. I completely agree with Matt saying, or with what Matt is saying. I just think he's kind of being a little dramatic about it. But yeah, I agree with
As
everything he
usual.
said.
If he wouldn't, he wouldn't
So
be.
my thought is this: before the pandemic happened, and every five businesses that we're even aware of are started closing down left and right. Movie theaters were already struggling. It's I just mentioned this on Facebook right before we started, but like it's not just this problem. The whole issue with movie theaters is a layered and multifaceted problem. There's a lot of things that need to be fixed and changed and whatever, but this is a part of the problem for sure. Movie theaters have to pay almost all of the ticket price back to the studios for the first like 2 weeks or something that the films are shown. So they're really making most of their money off of concessions and off of the movies that people actually go to see 3 and 4 weeks after they've been out and stuff like that. That's where they really start raking in money. Now they don't really rake in that much because people don't go see those movies that much. But the point is that um, as time went on and as home theaters became far more reasonably priced for the average person, you and also as multiplexes, the average multiplex started getting worse and worse and worse, and the viewing experience in movie theaters got worse and worse. More and more people started watching stuff at home more and not going to the movies as much, and that's a lot of people's fault. That's the movie theater's fault. That's a whole other thing. Like I said, multifaceted problem. But so long as we're all on the same page that we want movie theaters to be a thing and we want the option to go see big movies in theaters, we need them to stay alive. And they're not staying alive right now, they're dying. And the last thing that we need, if we all want movie theaters to be alive, is for streaming services to offer the option of showing movies at the exact same, like releasing them at the exact same time as the theaters. That's awful because half the people who go see movies are seeing it because they're hyped because they just came out and they're like, you know what, I want to go see it right now. The movie I just saw that the Ridley Scott movie, The Last Duel, just came out tonight, and I'm psyched because I'm gonna go see it tomorrow. Like if we weren't doing this tonight, I would be there seeing it tonight, right now. Like that's how a lot of people are. You know, they want to go see it as soon as they possibly can or at their earliest convenience. And even if people aren't necessarily, even if they're the kind of person who was given a choice between watching it at home and watching it at the theater, many people would choose to go to the theater if that meant seeing it 2 weeks early. But as soon as you start releasing them at the exact same time, the movie ticket sales are going to drop. So in my opinion, I'm totally okay with these streaming services having their stuff and whatever and showing movies. I'm even okay with them showing them earlier than they used to, because what did it used to be? Places like HBO and things like that, they used to put movies out that were like maybe like 4 weeks out or something like that, 5 weeks. You know, there was a certain amount of time that it used to be.
Usually it would be like a couple months.
Yeah, so months even. Yeah, well, like basically when the DVD would drop.
Maybe a month later, but usually it's
Yeah,
basically like the
pay-per-view.
theatrical run is close to
Exactly.
done.
So they gave them a cushion of time, is what they used to do, for the theaters to make their money. Now the streaming services are starting to put them out earlier and earlier and earlier. And as the earlier that gets, the more damage it's going to do to movie theater industry. So that's my problem. And like Matt said, it's bad enough when it's like right after it came out, like a week after or 2 weeks after. It's even worse if it's the same day. And it's just a slap in the face to do it a day early. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and also like this isn't just an issue of it being a blow to the film exhibition market. I mean, like,
yes, that's a good point.
I mean, like, you know, this is a problem that we've been looking at for a long time. I mean, you know, I had a 2K projector set up in my place in DC for 4 years, and when you realize, like, holy crap, I've got a 2K projector at home, and then I can go out to the theater and spend $15 and get a ticket to watch a 2K projected image there. You know, you kind of start to, you know, throw in a cost benefit analysis and like, okay, do I really want to go to the theaters for this?
Especially
I mean,
if you don't have any good theaters around you.
Right. I mean, the theaters are kind of shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, there were theaters in my area in DC that actually had smaller screens than I had at home. So I mean, I'm not putting all of this on streaming services. You know, like exhibition.
Yeah.
You know, film exhibition has been a problem for a while now. But the thing is, attention to detail is something that exhibits itself on a larger screen. There's a trailer out for this this show La Brea.
I vaguely remember that. Yeah.
And it looks like crap. With a trailer, you're supposed to put your best foot forward with the trailer, right? If you're making a comedy, you're supposed to put the funniest moments in the trailer to get people to go to see your movie, right? And if
ideally
the trailer doesn't make you laugh, then it's probably not a good comedy, right? La Brea looks like crap.
What does that have to do with?
I'm getting that.
Okay. This will not be 5 minutes, I guess, at this point.
Sorry.
I'm joking, but go ahead.
And if you move cinema to the point where you're not expected to put it on a big screen, where you're not expected to put it on the largest possible exhibition format that you can, in front of an audience, a discriminating audience that can actually examine every inch of your movie, you are going to get lazier movies.
Yeah. Over
Arguably,
time.
we've already been getting that technically, like with digital, like
Yeah.
capture and stuff
Yeah,
like that. But I personally think that none of this really matters that much. I think it's all happening regardless. Like laziness and there's always gonna be because it's ultimately an artistic form. The people that are making it, you're always gonna have shitty comedies that look like crap and are lazy, but then you'll have people like Denis and other ones and Spielberg that Nolan that would always have this obsession with quality and doing things on a grand scale and all that, regardless of the medium that it's going to be shown at. And then slowly I'll backtrack, I guess, with my argument for my opinion. This comes up a lot when filmmakers even talk about the theatrical experience, and ironically most of them don't actually watch too many movies in public or on a very big screen. I'm sure they have big screens at home and all that. Some of them have even film projectors, but generally they don't really watch it on a arc light size screen, and they don't watch stuff in public very often. So it's tough for them to even argue for it. And sometimes they'll even say like, well, you know what? I mean, ultimately, it was tough for me to see in theaters all the classics and foreign films and stuff like that, the small town I was in, but at on the TV screen with some of the channels you would or old VHS tapes and things like that. People often talk about that the really serious movies are the ones that they often saw on TV because they were old, unless you ended up in a later phase, early 20s, you start going to revival theaters and stuff, you catch up on seeing more and more things on the big screen. Lawrence of Arabia, the vast majority of people who's ever seen that movie only saw it on TV, most likely, even though it had a very long theatrical run back when it came out, and even though it's showing up at the Aero Theater almost every month. And there's a reason for that because it's a big movie. It makes sense why it shows up there every month, but ultimately, I saw that movie on a tiny 21-inch TV or something when I was growing up, and it was magnificent, even on that screen, because the human imagination, it takes you there. You see the scope, you see the deserts, you see it still registers. It's not exactly the same thing, but that's where human imagination comes in. It's the same thing with horror. It's the same thing with comedy. Like you don't need to see a Hitchcock movie with an audience to feel the tension in the crowd. If you respond to it, you'll respond to it alone in your own
Uh,
room. It's actually
two
scarier
things.
sometimes. Yeah, go
Question
ahead.
or two comments. First off, on the off chance that anybody ever listens to this and they're not from the LA area, just for clarification, when Gil said arc light size screen, he's referring to what arguably used to be one of the greatest movie theater chains of all time, and is now probably left to one single theater now after COVID. But to respond to what you're saying, I definitely agree with you that technically speaking, when it comes down to it, no movie has to be seen in a theater. Any movie could be seen in any way. I mean, you could even appreciate a movie watching it on your phone, if you're really have a great phone or something, But that's just getting down to the discussion of at the end of the day, what's the superior way to see a movie? Now, granted, sometimes an intimate experience alone in your house can have benefits that are better than a crowded theater full of terrible moviegoers. Because let's face it, if you go to a multiplex, oftentimes that's what you're stuck with. But ideally, though, if we're talking about in a best case scenario, watching a movie with good moviegoers or very few moviegoers in an auditorium with good sound and good seats and good everything. I mean, how can you beat that? I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
talk
no,
about the same movie that you said, like just if you were to watch Lawrence of Arabia for the very first time and you were seeing it at a great, at like something like, the Landmark or something, that'd be awesome.
yeah. But to finish up, like my argument, kind of get it all the way
Oh, I
back
didn't know you
where you
weren't
guys
done.
started.
Sorry.
Yeah, because I was tracing back the all the arguments that you made.
Yes,
Um, is
please.
I'm not against the theatrical. I've always had a very different understanding of it. People want to get out. People like going out. They don't want to be stuck at home. To me, the theater was never a way to watch movies. It was a reason to go out and do something that I really enjoy, which is watching movies. And yes, if you watch a comedy, which the fewest the genre with the least, except for horror, maybe like that I go to theaters is comedy. Ironically, because that's technically the genre that and horror are the only two genres where really there's an impact if you're sitting with a big audience, because you're laughing together or you're
Mm.
gasping together. But really, you sit down and watch dramas, which is 90%, or action movies, 90% of the movies that I go see in cinemas. The there's no I don't buy the whole thing about, oh, because there's other people, like you're sensing their energy. Not really. If it's not a horror or comedy, no. And you're right, sometimes that people that interrupt, but sometimes in a good revival theater, for example, you sit down and watch Barry Lyndon and they're cracking up, and Kubrick's humor, that definitely adds to it. It's not to say that the communal experience can't be elevating in certain circumstances, but I actually think that in 70-80% of them it's actually not, especially generic theaters. But yes, sound, size of the screen, all those things enhance it, which is why you're paying for it more than you would at home. But I think ultimately, and this is even growing up, I remember my friend was a worked at a theater, and I'm sure you guys know this as well. People come to the movies, a lot of people, they don't know what they're gonna see.
Yeah,
They literally ask the person at the register, so what's good? They just want to get out of the house. That's why I think theaters are never going to die. It's just gonna evolve. It's like the actual theater. If you watch Hamilton on Disney Plus, it's not as good as seeing it
of course not.
live, even more so than movies, because that's an actual live cast doing it in front of you. So that's a stronger difference than say a movie at home to a movie in the theater.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something there. There's something there. Like if I go out and watch The Dark Knight in a theater, it's more impactful than just sitting and watching it at home. But I still appreciate the movie to the same degree. It's just that the experience itself is different, which again, this is why people go out, and that's why I think theaters, because of what happened now with COVID, and I think, and to finally get to the point of why I think it's okay in this specific case, and they've explained it. Basically, there's a segment of the population that doesn't still feel comfortable going to the theaters, so they feel like give them the option, and then the people that do want to go to the theaters, they can go. I don't think that this is going to continue long term. I think they are going to have some gap, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever is going to satisfy. But I do think that theaters will no longer be the same. I think they are going to be perceived of like, listen, there's streaming, we have great TVs and projectors at home. It's not really too much about the quality. It's still going to be better in a theater because it's bigger and louder. But ultimately, the theater is a place you go to because you want to get out of the house. And there's just going to be less of them. There's going to be less movie theaters. And hopefully, the ones that stay, quality will increase because you'll have less, you know, crappy theaters, because the people that really care about it will select the better theaters. So I think it's from going from 4,000 screens or whatever, like they went up to, it might drop to 2,000 screens, and but it's still gonna be there, just like theater, just like the opera. The opera used to be the biggest like ticket seller in the world 100 years ago or something like that, and now it's a very, there's like very few tickets being sold, but it still exists. So I think that's what's going to happen with the movie theaters, and that's okay. I think that's fine. It's bad for some people if you live in a small town. If it's going to diminish the number of movies that you can see, but you can stream them at least, and you have that as a backup. I don't think it's the end of the world. I just think it's where the world is. So I don't lament it. And honestly, I have kids. I can't get to the theaters even if I even wanted. So the fact that I can see Dune close to when it comes out, and I don't mind waiting a couple of weeks just so you feel better about it. But I'll probably won't see it the day before. I'll probably see it 2 weeks later because that's when I'll get around to it. But I don't think it hurts anything. But from a business standpoint, yes, they have to make their own calculations. Like, do they make enough money from the streaming to on ticket sales and all that, and what's going to happen with the negotiation with the theaters? All that stuff is a different piece. But as far as being too precious about the theatrical representation, as long as there's some amount of it still being done for good movies, I'm satisfied. I don't need 4,000 screens.
All I'm going to say, and we can wrap this up. And
I got something after you're done, but go ahead.
okay. If you say that you saw Dunkirk, and then you follow that up with "I watched it on my phone," I will punch you in the fucking throat. I mean, no,
Well,
you
I
didn't.
mean, I'll give you an example because Jason said that. For example, I saw whenever I see a movie on an airplane, yes, that's a bridge too far. And also on the phone too. I wouldn't do that. A tablet maybe, but not a like an iPad, but not a phone. I think at that size, and especially the screens on airplanes that are kind of shitty. I saw Silence, the Scorsese movie, and I really felt like, I fell asleep during it, and I know that just the mood and the cinematography and everything probably would have elevated the experience, but I just could not. I didn't get much out of it from that
that, that,
tiny.
that was Prato who shot it, right? Yeah. I mean
Yeah.
that deserves more attention.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm completely agreeing that it's at a certain point, but at the same time, I saw Dunkirk on an IMAX theater with Jason, I believe,
Yeah.
and it sucked. Like I didn't like the presentation. I regretted and hoped that I had seen it just on a normal screen because the IMAX thing spoiled it for me for different reasons because there's too much headroom, there's inconsistency in the compositions because of the whole jumping from format to format and the grain density changes. It really annoyed me, but I'm a very specific type of person. So you see the other extreme can also be bad.
well, I mean, obviously, I am too, and we can have that discussion another day. But
Side note, I was happy that I went and saw Dunkirk in IMAX, if nothing else, because Christopher Nolan was doing so much, putting so much effort into trying to make it an experience. And
Mhm.
as we all know, that very well might be one of the last movies to ever be shown that way. Now with how terrible everything's going. But I do
It's
agree
going to
with Gil that yeah, I do agree with Gil that while I'm glad I went and saw it, I do remember walking out and going, "Good Lord! Like I could have seen this at a regular movie theater for half the price, and it would have still been really good, you know." But anyway,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, one last thing I'll say, I saw
yeah,
Interstellar at the Landmark on their couch theater, which is the smallest screen they have. But you're sitting on the couches 15 feet from the screen. You're pretty close. So the screen is the ratio of the screen is still as big as the big one because you're closer to it, and and it was great. And the composition stayed the same, and it was all 235. It was consistent, and it wasn't grain shifting back and forth. And I know that it was not shown that way on IMAX, and I think I had a better experience than if I had gone to see it on IMAX. But yes, but that's a different.
yeah.
I'm just
Well,
saying that
I
like
did
all
just
forms of
we could
yeah,
have a whole episode about that.
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
and
real
someday
quick,
we will. Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that we really shouldn't have this discussion of streaming services streaming the movie at the exact same time as the theatrical releases without at least briefly mentioning the whole issue that we're seeing now with like Scarlett Johansson and all these other actors who signed up for the movie expecting a normal release, and as such, got their pay structure set up in a way expecting, a normal, exhibition, And as a result of this, of like, like I said, all these people who have this option to go see it at home instead, ticket sales are suffering and they're not getting their back end money.
Yeah, and that's a good place to end it, because I said
Wait.
business part.
One more thing. One
Oh
more
yeah,
thing.
go ahead. But the
Very
business
important.
part, I completely agree. I mentioned that,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
different
you did.
side.
You did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But one last thing I just wanted to say, just because Gil, you did make a good point of saying, you said like that you do like the laughter energy at a comedy, or the surprise energy of a horror film kind of thing. But the majority of things you see in theaters are not those genres, right? And you said something to the effect of that you don't buy into the idea of like the communal energy in the room kind of thing for other stuff.
Except for revival theaters, there's definitely a different kind of energy.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, I don't know how you can possibly say that, because the three of us all went and saw Bloodsport at the New Beverly. And when you've got a sold out auditorium of people going, Kumite, 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 I mean, it's hard to beat that.
No, there's definitely revival theater is by far the best communal experience, but that's a different thing. That's like going to a comedy club. Like you really are. It's like-minded people coming to laugh, or in the case of revival theaters, coming to celebrate. It's like going to Comic-Con. It's a bunch of fans.
No, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Not random
I
strangers.
guess, in a sense, I guess the best thing would be if we could always strive for that kind of audience, like going to the ArcLight, going to the Landmark. But even that's less than half of that experience, because you're not, you know what I'm saying. But if there was some way to guarantee that your fellow audience members would always be enthusiastic cinema people, that'd be awesome. It's just probably not possible.
Yeah, no, I mean, Landmark and ArcLight has better crowds for sure. It felt that way to me, but it's still not the same as a revival theater, because again,
No, certainly
it's
not.
a fan base showing up, as opposed to a bunch of old people, young people, all mixed in together, moving fans, non-movie fans. But yeah, no, I mean, it's I again, I don't disagree with the feeling and the argument that you guys have. It's just that I'm not as precious about it, and this is probably because I don't watch as many movies in theaters as you do. So I always felt like less precious about it, and I definitely watched more movies over the course of my life at home than in the theaters. I just find that the theater is the little extra oomph, and whenever you want to get out because you don't want to be stuck at home all the time. That's just it is what it is.